lesson, and then we'll do some Q&A. So if you've been with us the last couple Sundays, just as a quick reminder, 4 weeks ago, we talked about how you can learn anything with SuperCool. Actually, just yesterday, I did a deep research on all of the best books on the history of AI and how it evolved, and just so I can get a better understanding. And then I had SuperCool create basically summaries of all of those books. I'm going to read the books. I bought the books on Amazon, but I also wanted to get a summary. I even sent them to Terry last night. So I practice what I preach. Definitely, you guys should be learning faster with SuperCool. I'll give you customized books whenever you want. That's still important. Then we talked about how the new year habits are more important than resolutions. Yeah, you can have some BHAG or some grand vision for your life, but what matters is really what you do today. And more importantly, how you think about making decisions every single day and attacking the most important thing and ignoring the rest. So that's still true. And then last week, we talked about surrounding yourself with the right community, the right people, and not listening to random people that have an opinion about everything but can't really help you. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about tool calling, kind of what is an API. Has anyone kind of struggled with this or not been able to get Famous to do something that you wanted it to do, and then maybe it asked you for an API, or it asked you for a code, or it asked you for a secret key or something like that? Has anyone experienced that? Detroit, Michigan. Nice, Lawrence. My mom was born in Detroit. You can see I have a Detroit hat. New Zealand, Albany, cool. Yeah, okay. So let me explain kind of sort of fundamentally the architecture of what's happening. And I don't think we've ever explained this, which I think will be good for you guys to know. So at the very base here, you have the LLMs, okay, the large language models. And below that, you have data centers and energy and all that kind of stuff. But just assume that the LLMs work. And what this means is that they are trained, a large language model is trained on how words and ideas and phrases relate to other words and ideas and phrases, okay? And what this means is that, for example, if I say Paris, right? If I type in Paris, how closely related is that word Paris to France versus red cat? Okay, it's obviously more closely related to France. And so what ends up happening is that if you combine all of the combinations of and weights of every word and every phrase and everything as it relates to every other thing, which is why you get these massive data sets, the LLMs are trained on how words and phrases and ideas relate to each other. And this is what its intelligence is, okay, at a fundamental level. And when it's done being trained, it's sort of snapped into reality. It's fixed, okay? Now, they come out with other versions. They come out with a 2.0 version, a 3.0 version, a 0.1 version, or whatever. But when it comes out, it's fixed, okay? It knows what it knows, and it's weighted how it's weighted. Everyone following so far? Okay. Then what ends up happening is you have a prompt, okay? And that prompt gives the LLM, generally speaking, two things, okay? It says, here's some additional context, plus here's what I want you to do, or here's the information that I need from you, okay? So you give it a goal, but you also give it some context. And this is where kind of prompt engineering comes into play, because if you're giving it a better goal, a more articulated goal, and you're giving it a better prompt or a better context, okay, in combination, with what it already knows, it can give you something more accurate to what you're looking for. Okay. So think about it this way. You have some prompt and then plus context. Okay. And then once it gets that, it will go down to the LLM. It will say, okay, what do I think this person wants? What's the best answer based on that? And then it'll pull back information that it already knows from the world. Okay, this is why if you ask it for like a book summary of The Great Gatsby, it doesn't have to do any web crawling or do some research on the fly because it kind of already knows everything that's already been done. Whereas if you ask it to give you some information on something that happened in the news yesterday, it will have to crawl the web and find out what's going on because it doesn't have that information because it wasn't trained on that information previously because it happened yesterday. Okay, but it'll give whatever it'll use whatever information that it already has that it's trained, and then it'll give you an output. Okay, does this make sense, guys? Everyone kind of following here? I promise I'm going to explain what an API is, but I'm going to building the context. Okay, so this is the input output human layer. Okay, and then what ended up happening is that we started building on top of this additional options like knowledge bases. Okay. So you give it a knowledge base, and then you can also build if you want to, like you can do your own training. Okay. This is called like fine tuning, and you can kind of fine tune how you want the LLM to give you an output relative to what you generally normally want as an output. Okay. So this is where knowledge bases come in. So what it's doing here is it's taking the prompt. Okay. It's taking whatever context you give it. It's combining it with the LLM, but it's also combining it with your knowledge base. Okay. This is like a next. It's almost like giving it a lot of context automatically. Okay. So you say, this is my goal, and it will say, hey, here's information that I already know, plus here's information from your knowledge base that you gave to me. Here's some information from the context, okay? And then I will combine all of that to predict what the best output is. Okay, this is one layer deeper. Does everyone understand? Are we following? One in the chat if you're following. Okay, cool. So what if, though, the output that you want, okay, is something that the LLM can't just give you some, it doesn't already know, okay, because it's like constantly changing. You give like a simple example, like the weather, okay? So like let's say you're trying to build something where there's a prompt or there's an input, like someone clicks a button, and then you want the output to give you a paragraph summary of the weather, okay? Well, maybe the knowledge base will tell the LLM how you want this output to be. The LLM already knows everything there is to know about weather in general, but it doesn't know what the weather is right now. Okay? And so this is just one example. You might have an API, okay, which is basically a tool that you can connect to whatever you're building inside of Famous that can give another input that helps the AI give you a more accurate output. Okay, so this could be a map. This could be like a RSS feed of whatever is happening in the news today. It could be the newest stocks, stock trading thing. It could be For ticket sales, maybe you have an API into what tickets are being sold constantly simultaneously, right? And you can have a lot of these working together. Think of them like little little softwares, little tools that can pull information from you and do little tasks whenever you want them to do that. Okay. So there's, nearly an unlimited amount of these. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I wanted to, just for myself, there was like 10 AI news YouTube channels that I wanted to keep track of. And of course, YouTube doesn't want you to have a lot of ownership over what you see. They want to own the algorithm and just kind of send whatever they think is going to get you to watch more advertising. But I want to be really controlled with what I'm seeing. And so I said, okay, let me build something where it has these 10 YouTube channels, and every day it scrapes them, finds out if there's any new videos, gives me the links, and also summarizes the videos so that every day I can just log in. This is just for myself, and I can see all of the latest news as it relates to certain news stations and also YouTube channels that I'm following. That makes sense? So when I was building it on Famous, it asked me for your Google API. What that means is connecting behind the scenes with Google, and it's able to give you live information. Okay? Is everyone? One in the chat if you're still with me, or if you're lost. One in the chat if you're following, two if you're lost. Okay. So you need to have these keys, okay, which is like your secret key. And it just means it's keeping track of, your particular use of that. And then sometimes you have to pay for tokens or for usage. The usage for this YouTube call was free because they give you like 10,000 credits per day just as being a normal Google member. But then if you use it as some crazy thing where I was pulling 10,000 videos a day, then obviously there would be some fee to it, but it was pretty much free. So I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but we already have some of these APIs built in to Famous now. One in the chat if you started to notice this. Like OpenAI. So if you ask Famous to start doing something that requires AI, like pulling data from an LLM live, you don't have to put in your key anymore. You guys notice this? Yeah. So we are slowly but surely adding more of these keys. Okay. So what that means is that our goal is whenever you ask Famous to build something that requires some key to pull information or pull knowledge from something that requires an API key, if we already have all of them for you, then you can just use the one that's already built in. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that you can't use your own if you want. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. Go into your database and you can connect whatever you want. Okay, so it's not limiting you if you want to get super unique and super advanced and do whatever you want. That's totally fine. But what it will do is it will hopefully speed up your process. Okay, this is kind of like it's not an exact corollary, but like how Stripe makes it really easy for you to have a merchant account. And all you have to do is just put in some basic information, and all of a sudden you have a merchant account and you're connected to a bank. Okay. If you don't do that through Stripe, and this is their sort of sweet spot, is they make it really difficult a bank makes it really difficult because they do background check and credit report and business plan and blah, 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 and they make it really complicated for you to do it. Just like if you were to create all your own API keys, it gets kind of complicated. And so this is what we're trying to do with Famous, and what we will do is make it really easy for you so that you don't even have to input those keys. Does that make sense? But just so everyone understands what a key is, it's pulling, like Google's over here, right? Okay. And you're in Famous and you're like, oh, I want my prompt. I give it context. Maybe I have a knowledge base. Maybe I'm using OpenAI, but I also need some information from Google in order to get the output. Okay. So you're stacking all of these inputs in order to get the best output. I need the weather. I need this YouTube video. I need a transcript from here. I need data about the stock market, right? You're like collecting all this information so that the output, whatever it is for you or for your customer, is the best output. Okay. And it's accurate. It's not hallucinating random stuff. So this is what an API key is. It's a tool. Okay. Is everyone one in the chat if you're still following? Did I lose everyone? Are we good? Okay. And yeah. Okay, Michael's lost, but that's okay. You can rewatch this. So think of it like this. You have a goal, okay, plus context, and that will give you an output. And you could be your user. But in order to make the context better, this is another way to think about it, is you have what's known in the LLM. Okay. You have maybe a knowledge base that you've built. Okay. You have the prompt, which gives it more context relative to that. But you also have API keys, which is essentially, an infinite scroll of whatever other information, other info, and other tools that you need in order to get the right output. This is kind of like the architecture, sort of like the engineering behind the scenes of what's actually happening. Okay. Everyone following this? This is what's happening. So known LLM, knowledge base if you've built one, whatever you put in the prompt plus API key equals the best output. Okay. This is like structurally what's happening. The reason why you need API keys is sometimes these tools are trained in something or they can access live data. That's pretty much it. Peter, good question. So our knowledge bases in Deal, Famous, or Super should be duplicated or copied and transferred into each section knowledge base. Yeah, if you have a very specific knowledge base, then for whatever software you're building, then that's definitely something that you should use, right? Another thing here is called fine tuning, which is like, so sometimes there's like it's basically like a meta prompt where even if you have, like, let's say I had like a book writing app, and I called it Hemingway. You could have a fine tuning meta prompt that always makes it sound like Hemingway, for example. This is like, there's very few use cases that you'd want to use something like that, but just know that is another variable. Right? I'll read these questions. Can you talk about the general landscape of how some API access is charged extra? Yeah, every single one is a little bit different, and it depends on how specific it is. Bianca. So it's hard to say that in general. But just look at their documentation and test them out, and then you'll find out how much each one costs. Yeah, and it's also in our pricing page, any particular API. What happens if you're in Famous and it just spins and says it's building and it's been doing it for days? Oh, you should start something else. Yeah, Catherine. Email support, see what's going on. But definitely don't just let it, just start a new dashboard. I would, delete whatever you're working on or maybe not delete it, but um, put it to sleep and then start over with something else. Yeah, or roll back. There's all sorts of different ways. What happens here in Famous? Oh wait, hey, I followed suggestions from Famous to set up email and Famous, and Deal wanted me to do the same thing to accept Famous. Yeah, they're different. Gwendolyn, they're different. They're different apps. Yeah, and you want to collect payment, from wherever you're accepting payments, you want to collect payment. So that's that. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, how to put it to sleep? If you go to your dashboard and then you go to settings, you can click sleep mode right there, the bottom. Wendy, super cool is different thing. Okay. So basically, whenever you're building your software, Famous is pretty smart and it's gonna like tell you what it thinks you need. So if you say, "Oh, I need, the daily news sent to this person's email whenever they sign up," it's gonna say, I need an API key for Google News or whatever it may be. Okay. It's gonna tell you. So we try to make it, a little dummy proof. Um, but you also got to think and you kind of, you got to use your brain and decide what you think is what tools you need. Does that make sense? Um, but you can get real creative there. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Terry, do you think did I miss anything? I just wanted to give a kind of a quick lesson on like how outputs are actually created structurally.
I think that was really solid. I think that provided a lot of clarity. Do you guys agree? Yeah, Larry agrees for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of simple, but um, it's really important.
Definitely.
Yeah. Steve, private key versus public key. So some companies just have like a public key that you can use and it'll just like pull data no matter what. Um, but it's hard to, or really like nearly impossible to kind of track kind of the flow of information. Whereas if you have a private key, one, usually sometimes it's a better tool. Sometimes they charge for it, but it's also a lot easier to track whatever information and to keep things obviously private, which is like safer. Can you use another system API key in your product? Yeah, you can use as many as you want, Francis. You can, there's like SuperCool uses, I don't know, 100 API keys. Um, Sounds confusing. Yeah, this is like what I try to do, guys. Is I try to like, there's a lot of like complicated stuff, but I try to give you in a way that it's like easy to understand. There are too many times when I prompt Famous to do something that Famous doesn't perform the task and I have to submit the same prompt. Yeah, it depends on the prompt. A lot of times you think you're giving explicit instructions, but you know that if you guys ever, the stereotypical story of a genie. where, it says like 3 wishes and you say, I want to be taller. And, but then you're taller, but you have like, no feet or something. I don't know. Like, and the genie's like, oh, see, you never said you didn't want no feet, and you're like, well, like, so it's kind of famous is kind of like that sometimes, like whenever you're talking to it, you think that you're being explicit, but like the more explicit, the more you're going to get exactly what you want. Please shrink this, you want this, the whole thing. Yeah. Everyone, I feel like some people like this and some people don't, but it is who I am. I like these whiteboard things. Um,
We all love the Jonathon whiteboards. Come on.
yeah, I can't help it. It just,
Especially your wife, right? When you whiteboard your
yeah.
wife.
She's like, I'm gonna draw this, and she's like, just tell me.
Just
Uh,
for those of you who don't know, we did a live call and he was explaining about sometimes how his wife gets the whiteboard treatment, and I thought that was very, very funny. If I tried to give my wife the let me break it down for you. Let me bring up a whiteboard. Probably not the
yeah.
best response.
Touch on security of our website, not talking about HTTPS. Um, I don't know what you mean by security. Um, SuperCool is another charges as well. It's monthly, but if you run out of credits, then it'll ask you to upgrade. Uh, when you clone a project, does all connections remain connected? Um, if you clone it to another account, it's not going to have the API keys. So you have to reconnect them. Can you ask Famous to diagram things out like you've done? Yeah, you can ask. Okay, Catherine and everyone else, can you ask dot dot dot? The answer is always yes. Can you ask super cool too? Anything. Yeah, you can ask it. Can you ask famous too? Dot dot dot. Yeah. Um,
And remember, guys, on that point, I'm not sure if Jonathan mentioned or not. If I'm re-repeating this, re-repeating, just repeating it. You can ask Famous for absolutely free any question you want on
yeah.
whatever it can or can't do. But it can, like Jonathan says, it can pretty much do most, if not all things at this point. You just need to ask it, and there is no charge if there's basically a question mark at the end of your sentence or your question. And
Interesting thing what you said, Steve, about has SuperCool been optimized for? SuperCool isn't really been optimized. I mean, the way to think about AI, because it's an emergent, it's like emergent. It's like I don't have children, but those of you who have children, um, I'm sure they surprise you, right? You're like, oh wow, I didn't, they were listening here and they connected that and then they did this and then and they kind of, I hear this all the time from parents where like your child kind of surprises you because they're their own consciousness, they're their own thing and they just like they kind of do whatever you do.
hey,
And
Anwar, you've got to can you stop? We see your question. Can you stop posting that to host and panelists, please? Thank you.
oh, um, oh
Sorry.
yeah, and I just copied and pasted this same thing 3 times. Yeah. Uh, so the uh, the AI it doesn't, we're kind of guiding it more than we're not like forcing, don't think of it like an equation, okay? So we're not saying anything. Like let's say we want it to be better at videos, right? Super cool. We want super cool to be better at images. We want it to be better at book writing. We want it to be better at ads. We want it to be better at synthesizing data. We want it to be better at giving Excel sheets or whatever, right? So everyone's using it for something different. We're not saying if someone does this, then this, then this, then this, then this. It's actually funny. I don't know, Terry, if you started um, listening to the summaries. I found out why you thought it was the same book, by the way. It's because, anyways, it doesn't matter.
Oh, they were two separate books.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
All right.
But the first like 10 minutes of it, the audio had connected incorrectly.
Ah,
So
right,
the
right.
like real audio of it was like 7 minutes in. But anyways, um, it's funny because in the 80s, because the idea of AI, has been long, been around for a while, but the Turing, like the Turing test, that was like mid 20th century. And there was this kind of boom where everyone thought, oh, we're going to be able to do AI. And what they were doing is they were trying to, and they meaning like the scientists that were like early in AI, what they were doing is they are they were trying to basically make an algorithm for everything that humans do, right? So like if this happens, then a human does this. If someone says this, this is what they do. If this is the problem, this is the solution, right? And they were trying to, that's a lot of data, but they were just trying to create like all of these if this, then that kind of equations, okay? And then they were going to train the AI on memorizing all of these equations so that whenever you gave it a problem, it would say, oh, this is what a human would do, and then I'll do it. Okay, that's like early AI, what they were trying to engineer. That didn't work because one, every human is different. There's no real problems. There's no real like obvious solutions to problems. It's like it's just it totally didn't work. And they were doing that for a really long time. And then there was kind of a lull. And then they realized, oh, instead of us trying, I know this is a long explanation, but instead of us trying to tell the AI, if this happens, I want this to happen. If this is the problem, this is the solution. If this word, then that word. They didn't say that. And honestly, guys, the real reason why LLMs are able to exist now in the way that it is was actually the internet. Because the data, instead of humans saying this is all the information that you need, and here's all the patterns of what you need, they said, just look at everything that's ever existed in the history of the internet, all the data ever, right? And what the LLMs do is they notice the patterns between everything. Remember I talked about that, like the weights, right? Like if I say Paris, France is pretty close to that. And so they're weighting all of these combinatorial options. And now the data set was just the internet. Okay. And so similarly with SuperCool, we're not trying to force it into like, this is how you should do video SuperCool. This is how you should do images SuperCool. This is how you should do writing SuperCool. This is how you should do PowerPoint SuperCool. We're kind of giving it examples and kind of giving it a little bit of a constraint, like, hey, here's like kind of what we're looking for, sort of. But we don't want to constrain it because it will surprise you and it will surprise us. So what we're doing with SuperCool is we're building an architecture, okay? But we're not training it for any particular thing.